For years, the British establishment has tried, sometimes desperately, to move on from the Sussex drama. Yet each new week seems to pull Buckingham Palace, Parliament, and the press back into the same gravitational field of controversy. Now, Westminster is abuzz again with reports of peers debating whether a formal petition should exist to revisit the titles and privileges of the Duchess of Sussex, whether the petition itself carries legislative weight or is merely symbolic. Its very discussion has cracked open a cultural fault line that runs straight through the heart of Britain's constitutional monarchy. It pits two competing visions of what royalty should mean in the 21st century: heritage versus celebrity, duty versus autonomy, service versus self-expression. The spectacle has become almost cinematic. Once hailed as a modern love story that would breathe life into the monarchy, Meghan Markle's entry into the royal family has transformed into a political soap opera that refuses to end. Inside the Lord's wood-paneled chamber, where crimson benches have witnessed centuries of empire, reform, and crisis, some peers now whisper the unthinkable, that the Crown's global credibility cannot be rebuilt until the Sussex question is settled. The symbolism is staggering. The upper house of Parliament, an institution that normally concerns itself with trade bills and foreign policy white papers, has become the latest stage for Britain's longest-running cultural drama. Commentators call it constitutional theater. The public calls it justice long overdue. Either way, the debate over Meghan's titles has become more than gossip. It's a referendum on how far modern royals may go in challenging the institution that defines them. When Meghan Markle married Prince Harry in May 2018, Britain momentarily exhaled. The wedding felt like a national rebrand. The ancient monarchy embracing diversity, a Hollywood actress becoming Duchess in a spectacle watched by nearly 2 billion viewers. For a brief moment, the country believed it had found harmony between tradition and modernity, but that harmony fractured almost immediately. Within months, staff departures from Kensington Palace fueled headlines about bullying, feuds, and dueling duchesses. The tabloids sharpened their knives. Social media divided into tribes. Supporters saw Meghan as a victim of racism and rigid hierarchy. Critics saw her as an ambitious outsider, exploiting royal privilege. What might have been a cultural bridge became a battlefield. By the time the couple announced their withdrawal from royal duties in January 2020, the split had hardened into something deeper than media gossip. It had become ideological. Polling data since then paints a consistent picture. Roughly 2/3 of Britons believe Meghan has damaged the monarchy's reputation. Even among younger voters who once admired her, sympathy has dwindled. The YouGov tracker of royal favorability shows the Duchess routinely near the bottom of the table, below minor royals who never give interviews. For defenders of tradition inside the Lords, these numbers are not trivial. The monarchy's survival depends on public consent. When the public loses trust, peers begin to worry about constitutional legitimacy itself. Hence, the talk of a petition is not merely punitive, it's defensive. To them, Meghan's conduct represents an existential threat to the monarchy's delicate contract with the nation, privilege in exchange for discretion and duty. The controversy now divides not only classes but generations. Progressive commentators in the United States frame Meghan as a whistleblower challenging an outdated institution. British constitutionalists view her as the embodiment of an imported celebrity culture that confuses publicity with purpose. The tension is cultural as much as political, a clash between the quiet stoicism Britain prizes and the confessional individualism America exports. Inside Westminster, this division translates into uneasy debates. Some peers fear that public outrage has reached such a pitch that silence will appear as complicity. Others warn that engaging with the issue risks dragging the Lords into tabloid territory. Yet both sides concede one truth: no royal figure since Edward VIII has polarized Britain as deeply as Meghan Markle. Each new media appearance by the Sussexes reopens the wound. The Oprah interview of 2021, watched by nearly 50 million worldwide, detonated claims of racism and indifference within the royal household. To critics, those allegations crossed a sacred line, airing internal disputes before a global audience while still carrying royal titles. To supporters, it was courageous truth-telling. For the institution, it was chaos. In constitutional terms, royals exist as symbols of national unity above politics. When that symbol becomes divisive, the Crown's moral authority erodes. Senior peers point to this as the foundation for any future legislative review. that the Sussex saga has turned what should be apolitical heritage into partisan spectacle. If the Oprah interview cracked the facade, the Netflix series Harry and Meghan smashed it to pieces. Released in late 2022, the 6-part documentary presented itself as an intimate chronicle of trauma and self-discovery. In practice, it became a global courtroom where the royal family stood accused and could not reply. For the first time, the British public saw palace corridors through the cinematic lens of California confession. Viewers expecting reconciliation instead received a narrative of grievance. Meghan describing herself as silenced, Harry portraying the press as predators, and both suggesting the institution valued reputation over well-being. The series trended worldwide, but in Britain, the reaction was ferocious. Even moderate commentators called it a glossy declaration of war. Within days, parliamentary inboxes filled with complaints from constituents demanding that the couple cease using royal titles in commercial ventures. By early 2023, several lords publicly questioned whether continuing to style themselves as Duke and Duchess while producing a profit-driven docuseries amounted to misuse of honors. Lord Kilcloony went on record saying that no member of the royal family should monetize titles that belong to the crown, not the individual. At the heart of the Netflix controversy lies the issue of commercialization. The opening credits of Harry and Meghan introduced them by full titles. Promotional material referenced, "The Duke and Duchess of Sussex tell their story." To peers steeped in constitutional etiquette, that wording was incendiary. In their view, the Sussexes had converted symbols of state into marketing assets. Economists who study media branding estimated that the Royal Association added tens of millions of dollars to the couple's market value in streaming and publishing contracts. To many in Britain's political class, that looked less like self-expression and more like exploitation. The House of Lords Communications Committee, though not formally investigating, held informal discussions on whether existing guidelines on the use of royal designations were sufficient in the digital age. Several members argued that the line between personal narrative and commercial endorsement had been obliterated. Public opinion hardened rapidly. The Daily Mail and Telegraph ran front-page polls showing that over 60% of respondents believed the Sussexes should be stripped of their titles. Even left-leaning outlets that once defended Meghan criticized the series for performative victimhood. The tone of national debate shifted from sympathy to exhaustion. In pubs, on call-in radio, and across social media, the refrain became familiar. If you hate the monarchy, stop using its titles. This sentiment, half anger, half common sense, gave political cover to peers contemplating a symbolic petition. They could frame it not as personal malice, but as public duty, aligning with majority opinion that the institution must defend its integrity. Behind the scenes, senior aides to both Downing Street and Buckingham Palace reportedly expressed concern that the Sussex narrative was overshadowing the new reign of King Charles III. The monarchy's soft power depends on global perception. Every headline about Netflix drama diluted the gravitas of a sovereign seeking stability. Foreign correspondents covering the series noted the irony. Britain, once master of global image crafting, had lost control of its own story. That loss of narrative control is precisely what alarms constitutional conservatives. The monarchy's authority rests not on law alone, but on myth, on the perception of unity, service, and restraint. When that myth becomes content for streaming platforms, the institution's mystique evaporates. The lords who talk of petitions see themselves as guardians of that mystique, not reactionaries but preservationists. To Meghan's critics, the Netflix project confirmed their worst suspicions, that she views royalty as a stage for personal storytelling rather than public service. To her supporters, it was an overdue reclamation of voice from a hostile press. Yet even sympathetic analysts concede that the documentary blurred the line between private catharsis and public attack. Each revelation invited counter-revelations. Each defense spawned a new controversy. By the end of its run, the series had achieved something extraordinary. It united the British political class, tabloids, and even some Republican critics in one rare consensus that the monarchy had never looked more vulnerable to cultural trivialization. The Lords' chatter about petitions is best understood not as vengeance, but as an alarm bell ringing through the machinery of state. The question is not merely, should Meghan lose her titles, but how does the crown prevent its symbols from becoming entertainment properties? The anxiety is institutional. The monarchy has survived abdications, divorces, and scandals, but never before has it faced competition from its own former members on global streaming platforms. In that sense, the Netflix fallout is historic. It marks the first time a branch of the royal family has leveraged royal identity to produce mass-market media critical of the institution itself. For constitutional scholars, this is unprecedented territory. For the House of Lords, it is unacceptable. And for Keir Starmer's government, it is an embarrassment waiting to explode into legislative scrutiny. Thus, by early 2024, Britain found itself trapped in a surreal loop. A monarchy striving for quiet dignity, a parliament debating petitions about celebrity behavior, and a public oscillating between fascination and fatigue. The Duchess of Sussex had become more than a person. She was a mirror reflecting Britain's struggle to reconcile history with modernity. The Petition, real or symbolic, acts as lightning rod for that struggle. To its supporters, it is a necessary stand for accountability. To its critics, a distraction from deeper issues. But one fact is indisputable. Meghan Markle has forced the oldest monarchy on earth to confront questions it spent centuries avoiding. Every argument about Meghan Markle ultimately circles back to one issue. How much privilege should a royal title confer once a person stops serving the crown? The Duchess of Sussex remains a duchess because her title is legally part of her husband's peerage, created by royal patent in 2018. There is no automatic mechanism to recall it simply because public opinion has soured. Yet the symbolism of that title fuels outrage. To constitutional traditionalists, the word Duchess implies active duty and allegiance. To many Britons who watch the Sussexes build global media ventures, it feels like borrowed authority. This tension lies at the heart of endless editorials and parliamentary chatter. Peers who have commented publicly insist that their concern is not personal animosity, but constitutional precedent. If titles are perceived as lifetime commercial assets rather than public honors, the monarchy's moral contract with the people weakens. As one crossbench peer told The Telegraph, when a title becomes a brand, it ceases to be a symbol of service. The legal scholars who advise Parliament confirm that nothing short of legislation or the monarch's explicit act could revoke such titles. That reality frustrates critics, but also protects the apolitical nature of the crown. Revoking peerages by whim would politicize an institution meant to stand above politics. Thus, the petition debate, even if symbolic, exposes the deeper anxiety. Britain is unsure how to discipline a royal who no longer behaves royally. For centuries, the British monarchy cultivated distance, mystique, and silence. Meghan Markle's arrival imported a culture of exposure. Her instincts, televised interviews, personal storytelling, brand alignment, reflect the American celebrity playbook, not the Windsor rulebook. Supporters argue that this openness modernizes the institution, making it relatable to a generation raised on social media. Detractors counter that it turns royalty into reality television. The conflict is cultural. Britain venerates reserve. Hollywood rewards confession. Inside the House of Lords, senior peers have expressed concern that this performative transparency erodes the crown's dignity abroad. Diplomats quietly agree. The monarchy functions as Britain's soft power engine, its pageantry a subtle form of diplomacy. When its imagery becomes tabloid currency, that soft power bleeds away. Whether one sees Meghan as reformer or rebel, the result is undeniable. She has Americanized the monarchy's global image. For traditionalists, the petition chatter is not about punishment, but about containment, a symbolic effort to draw a line between public service and entertainment. Buckingham Palace rarely speaks. Its silence is policy, not indifference. Yet within that silence, courtiers have made their feelings known through careful leaks to reputable newspapers. Phrases such as a continuing distraction and deeply regrettable commercialization have appeared repeatedly in palace-adjacent briefings. The late Queen's watchword was never complain, never explain. Her successors attempt to preserve that discipline even as digital culture makes silence appear guilty. Officials privately admit that the Sussex controversies consume bandwidth. The palace would rather devote to the King's environmental initiatives and the Prince of Wales's community programs. The unspoken royal stance is pragmatic. They cannot strip titles without igniting constitutional debate. But they can distance the institution symbolically. Meghan and Harry's absence from official events, the removal of their HRH styles from royal website listings, and the tight control over ceremonial invitations all signal the palace's quiet disapproval. It is ostracism by protocol, diplomacy through omission. At first, Britain's fascination with the Sussex story bordered on sympathy. By 2024, it curdled into exhaustion. Opinion polls show a steady decline in public interest, replaced by irritation at the never-ending transatlantic interviews, podcasts, and memoirs. Sociologists studying media consumption note a phenomenon called compassion fatigue, when constant exposure to grievance narratives breeds cynicism instead of empathy. In the UK, that fatigue has reached saturation. Listeners who once defended Meghan's perspective now say, enough. This shift is not merely tabloid gossip. It affects constitutional legitimacy. The monarchy's endurance relies on emotional goodwill. When citizens associate royal titles with drama rather than dignity, Republican arguments gain traction. Thus, even a symbolic petition resonates. It channels the weary sigh of a nation that wants closure. The Sussex brand sits at a peculiar intersection of monarchy and market. Their commercial success depends partly on the cachet of royalty, yet their message is that they escaped its constraints. To ethicists, that paradox is unsustainable. In advertising law, endorsement by implication carries weight. Invoking royal association can confer authority even without explicit promotion, hence the unease within parliamentary committees overseeing media regulation. They cannot legislate manners, but they can debate whether Britain needs clearer guidelines on how royal designations appear in private enterprise. When Spotify executives ended their podcast partnership with the Sussexes in 2023, industry analysts cited brand misalignment. Translated, the royal aura had become a commercial liability. What began as glamour now looked like controversy. For the monarchy's defenders, that was vindication, the market itself rejecting misuse of royal symbolism. For critics of the monarchy, it proved how entangled class, commerce, and celebrity have become. Either way, the episode underscored that in the digital economy, reputation is currency, and royal titles are the most volatile asset of all. Britain's constitutional monarchy is more than ceremony. It is a diplomatic instrument. Royal tours, state banquets, and charitable patronage project stability abroad. When the monarchy becomes a global soap opera, that projection falters. Foreign correspondents covering the Sussex narrative often frame it not as family drama, but as institutional crisis. In Washington, commentators on morning television debate whether Britain's royal family is racist. In Sydney, newspapers wonder whether Commonwealth realms should keep the king as head of state. Each cycle of Sussex revelations feeds Republican movements from the Caribbean to Canada. Former ambassadors warn privately that Britain's soft power, the intangible influence derived from admiration, declines every time royal disputes dominate headlines. The petition conversation, though mostly symbolic, signals Westminster's recognition of that cost. It is an attempt to reclaim narrative control, to remind the world that the Crown's authority flows from service, not celebrity. Even if the Lords were unanimously to demand revocation of titles, the legal machinery to achieve it hardly exists. The 1917 Titles Deprivation Act, invoked against peers who supported Germany during World War I, targeted treason, not scandal. Modern legislation would require drafting, Commons approval, royal assent, and, most dangerously, politicization of the monarchy. Legal experts from King's College London and Oxford's Faculty of Law point out that such an act could open Pandora's box. If titles can be removed for reputational harm, future governments could use the same power against political enemies. Britain's unwritten constitution depends on restraint. The Crown must remain above the fray. Therefore, the current debate operates largely in the realm of symbolism. A petition in the Lords, even if tabled, would serve as moral censure, not legal command. Its value lies in signaling that standards of royal conduct matter. The irony is that this symbolic gesture receives far more attention than any binding bill could. In the court of public opinion, perception is verdict enough. Every monarchy endures periodic reckonings. Each must decide how to adapt without erasing itself. The Sussex controversies have accelerated Britain's own reckoning. They force ancient institutions to confront 21st-century questions. What is the difference between service and self-promotion? How can privilege coexist with transparency? Should tradition bend to modern ethics or defend its own boundaries? Within the palace, the preferred answer is silence. Within Parliament, the answer is debate. Within the public, the answer is division. Yet beneath those surface tensions lies a shared fear that the crown's mystique, once lost, may never return. For many Britons, Meghan Markle embodies that risk. To her supporters, she exposes hypocrisy. To her detractors, she epitomizes it. Either way, she has changed the monarchy irrevocably. The mere idea that peers might discuss petitions proves how fragile royal reverence has become. The House of Lords may never vote on such a motion. The king will almost certainly keep silent. But the conversation itself is transformative. It shows that the monarchy's future now depends not on divine right or ancient law, but on public trust in an age of relentless scrutiny. And trust, once broken, is harder to restore than any title to revoke. In truth, there is no formal petition winding its way through Westminster's committees. What exists is a metaphor, a collective sigh from a nation weary of contradiction. Stripping titles has become shorthand for demanding accountability from a family that has always operated above it. Whether one believes Meghan Markle has been mistreated or has mistreated the monarchy, the intensity of the debate proves her impact. She has forced Britain to articulate what loyalty, duty, and identity mean in an era when fame is global and privacy extinct. For the palace, that challenge is existential. For Parliament, it is procedural. For the public, it is emotional. And for the world watching, it is the latest chapter in Britain's ongoing struggle to balance modern values with ancient pageantry. The House of Lords need not pass a bill for that reckoning to be real. The judgment is already written in the shifting tides of public opinion,